Hello, everybody. I would like to open the meeting of the Village of Lansing Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Tonight it is 7:03 or 7:04, and I believe we're waiting for one more person. Is that right?
We are, but
Is that him?
we can get going and.
We have things to do before he arrives. Is it your engineer?
I have the data electronically, so first, please maybe I can email it to you.
You have the short EAF?
Yeah.
Well, we get to that point, we need it, if he's not here, then we'll get to, we start to discuss the whole thing.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I guess what I would like to do is read the agenda. We have a rather long agenda. This is a fairly complicated issue that we have before us. So on the agenda, I'll need a motion to open the public hearing for this appeal, for Appeal 2026-0304. And then Mike will brief us on the issue, and then Laura, you're Laura. Hi, nice to meet you. We'll describe the project. We'll take public comments, board comments. At that point, we'll close the meeting, the public hearing rather, and then we go through the environmental review, the seeker resolution, and if we vote on granting the variances, we will do that then, or not to accept them, whichever. And then we will have discussion, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll be done. Although we have a resolution, we'll have resolutions to adopt. Okay, so it's kind of a long list. So what I'd like to do is I'd
Make a
motion in the meeting. Here comes your person, I think.
I'll second it.
Devin seconded. All those in favor? It's a public meeting is now open. Public hearing is now open for discussing our first order of business, which is the Appeal 2026-03 area variance. And that is to consider the Core Warren. What is Core?
Core Warren Road LLC and Bomax Holdings LLC.
They're seeking two area variances for a proposed mixed-use project located southwest corner of Bomax Drive and Warren Road. The property is within the Business and Technology District, which requires a 75-foot front yard setback. To the north, a minimum density of 6,000 square feet per dwelling unit. The proposed front yard setback is 52 and proposed density is 1,425 square feet per unit. So we now are ready to have a description of what this project is.
The first variance of 2026-03 has to do with density. And I'll talk a little bit on this because we haven't had a density one. The other one of you folks has had density the time we deal with setbacks, which is our second variance. But with the first variance in density, sometimes it's hard to understand what actually density is described and what it actually is. The closest example I can give you is for, say, this room, we have a assembly room that has an occupancy of 62. And what the uniform code is allowing is 7 square feet per person. That's doesn't mean the person has to take up that 7 square feet, but that's what they're allowing for to, in their case, not this case, but in their case, to feel that everyone is safe if somebody had to get out of the building. It has nothing to do with their case. Getting
Understand density.
That just gives you an idea of what they're talking about. It's not B&T district. They allow for 6,000 square feet per dwelling unit. And this property is 3.6 acres. Okay, and that calculates out to a maximum of 26 dwellings. The applicant is proposing 110 dwelling units. And what that does is it takes density down to 1,425 square feet per dwelling. That's an increase of 4,575 feet per dwelling unit. So that's what you're looking at tonight. Okay. I'd like to have you look at, you have paperwork here that says 2603. Nice enough to fill out the 5 questions that you normally end up going to determine whether you allow for a variance. I have a couple changes on there because when this was made, there was it was going to be a larger parcel. Now we're down to a smaller part. It's Exhibit C. And on the second page, you'll see that I highlighted. Okay, it's basically a 300+% density increase. And is increasing from 26 units to 110 units. You'll see where I've marked this all down here. And it's an additional 84 units. So make sure you make that clear that it does change some on this, okay? I think that's kind of all I really have for you. And like I had sent in an email to you before, that this variance is not based on whether you approve this project or don't approve this project. It's strictly referring to whether density and the 5 questions we have to, the standard that we have to look at for a variance. Basically all I have.
Okay. So Laura, would you like to come forward and describe the whole project, please? We all have schematics in front of us, so. Good.
You can't.
Is it all right, Phil?
That's great.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction. As noted in our application, we're before you for a 110 multifamily residential unit, mixed use development that we also anticipate having 7,720 square feet of retail space. So it'll be a mixed use development, 2 buildings right there on the corner of Warren and Bomax. The items before you today are 2 variances. The first is to permit the 110 units in the multifamily residential, and as well as that setback. And the reason why both of those items are key to the project, the first is the 110 units is necessary for the financial viability of the multifamily residential. The setback is due partially to the size of the lot, but then also the use of the retail space being as part of the mixed use. We're looking for more of a sidewalk engagement, more of a streetscape engagement. So in looking at the configuration of the parcel of where do we seek the variance from? Do we move a little back? Do we move a little forward? It was important to us to have that streetscape engagement, to have the engagement with a sidewalk. So that's why we're before you today for the variance from Bomax to set back about 15 feet back from the right of way. I'm sorry, from the requirement for setback. I also wanted to start with the village's brand new comprehensive plan, just adopted in March, quite hot off the presses. And wanted to note a few items that are from the comprehensive plan that are supportive of a multifamily mixed use residential here in the BZA district. First, as part of the comprehensive plan, one of the goals is to support local zoning strategies, private initiatives, non-governmental organizations, and governmental programs that promote the development of quality, energy efficient housing appropriate in size, variety, location, accessibility, and cost for many different types of households. Another goal is to encourage residential developers to consider mixed use development and to improve the existing housing stock. Another note from the comprehensive plan notes that 55.1% of the individuals that were polled would like commercial areas to move in the direction of mixed use and pedestrian centered commercial development. And 23.1% support increasing density in low density residential areas by either reducing frontage requirements, allowing more duplexes, ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units, or seeking other opportunities to decrease housing costs. Next, I'll note from the comprehensive plan that there is a goal as part of the comprehensive plan is to consider and review existing zoning that is inconsistent with today's live, work, play lifestyle. And then one more note from the comprehensive plan, which I find particularly telling for the application before you. It's here. That is finding, it's not, I mean, it's not where it's marked. Essentially, there's only, I believe one parcel in a high density residential district that's still available for development. The rest of the high density residential district, the majority of it is already developed. So when thinking about the goals of the comprehensive plan, the goals of the village and the goals of supporting high quality, different types of mix of multifamily residential units, it's really looking at the B&T district of what can be done in the B&T district to help this development and help meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. So with that, I would like to draw your attention to Exhibit C, where we walk through balancing tests that's going to board the ZBA in the consideration of these two variances. The first item before the ZBA's consideration is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. What's unique about this property is that it is within the B&T district. It is surrounded by business and technology uses. The Dairy One Cooperative is just south of the parcel. That is ironically in a high density residential district, but it is used for industrial use. We're right across the street from the Cornell Business and Technology Center, about kitty corner to the airport, and just down the street from Morris Chamber. So it's a very up and coming neighborhood. There's a lot of transition, but when thinking about the typical impact to a neighborhood or impact to the community, you know, this could be right on the cusp of moving towards residential and being a real change maker in that neighborhood. Allowing the 110 unit mixed unit development and the 52-foot front yard setback will therefore not produce this undesirable change and will not create a detriment to nearby properties. It's consistent with high density residential and commercial uses in the surrounding area, just 2 parcels down and maybe 2 parcels to the southwest are 2 multifamily residential developments in that area, complete with walking areas, trails, and parks. Notably, the increase of units is not a result of a larger building footprint than what is permitted in the business and technology use district. And this, I think, is an important one when looking at the potential impact of this going up in density. A goal of this project is to have a higher ratio of studio and 1-bedroom apartments, which would be perfect for young professionals, seniors, individuals who are not yet quite ready to start a family but want to settle here in the village of Lansing. Because of that high mix of studio and 1-bedroom apartments, the footprint that the number of units take up, the number of units that fit within that footprint is what pushes us to that density. So again, it's not looking for setbacks of maximum building coverage or setbacks other than that front yard setback. We are within the boundaries of where we can in the building. We're just including a different mix of residential use within that building, which is creating the higher density. Again, the setback from 75 feet to 52 feet is modest in scale, but meaningful in the impact on the pedestrian experience. Bringing the structure to the sidewalk would better connect that mixed use space with the sidewalk and pedestrian access, while still preserving the clear sight lines and unobstructed pedestrian corners. The second test that the ZBA is looking at, or criteria in their balancing test, is whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Some individuals might be familiar that this has been the subject of a few different concept plans. All of them have been a much higher density than what's being proposed today. This has been brought down to both be thoughtful in the site, to be thoughtful in the placement in the B&T district, but also as the least amount of the smallest number of units that could be in this mixed use residential neighborhood while still making it economically feasible. So this 110 is really the lowest number we could get down to while still making this a viable project.
Excuse me.
Yeah, please.
I don't know. Am I allowed to interrupt her during her presentation. I don't want to, I'll let her finish if you'd rather. Do you prefer that?
Go ahead and ask.
I'm just looking for clarification on
Yes,
that
please.
point. I won't diverge. You said this is the lowest. What is the highest you've had?
I believe
254.
254.
And with much larger acreage?
It was combining the two.
Combining to,
Okay, 234. Thank you. I didn't mean to.
254.
Thank you, sir.
Actually, at some point, there was even a 500 units per proposal.
This first,
Okay.
500 was the first one.
That was the second thing.
Quickly went down.
All right, thank you for the clarification. Oh, no, I like to let your thing flow, but
The third criteria is whether the requested area variance is substantial. I will note here that courts have looked at different ways to look at the idea of substantial. And it is not necessarily a substantiality of a variance can be assessed on the totality of the circumstances, including the nature of the deviation, the size of the property, and its effect on the surrounding community. As noted, especially with that change, to be fully transparent with that change, that number difference is quite high to go from 26 to 110. However, when looking at the substantiality of that change, again, I want to draw your attention to, we're still within that footprint of how big the building may be. We just have a number of efficiency units and studios and one-bedroom apartments. So it is the mix of the units inside of that building that's driving this density. Likewise, that reduction in the front yard setback from 75 feet to 52 feet, again, it's to engage with the landscape, it's to engage in the pedestrian access. So although it is a minor setback from the 74 to 52, it's modest in scale and will strengthen the connection between the mixed-use ground floor space and the adjacent pedestrian infrastructure. I'll also note as part of this project, although not before the ZBA today, as part of the site plan is an extension of that sidewalk from where it is on going along Warren. There's a sidewalk that just ends at the property line. So as part of this proposal, it would be an extension of that sidewalk. So when we're thinking about the community space, when we're thinking about pedestrian access, that sidewalk is part of it. The fourth criteria is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. Here, when looking at the environmental assessment form, which we do have to pass out, there is no adverse effects on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district anticipated. There is no endangered, threatened, or rare species present on or near the site, and no critical environmental areas, impaired water bodies, or national or state registered historic or archaeological resources would be impacted by the increase in density or the reduced front yard setback. The project generates no on-site air emissions, there's no anticipated exceedance of ambient noise levels, and no hazardous waste. It incorporates on-site stormwater management facilities designed to ensure that runoff does not flow to adjacent properties. Another juxtaposition that I think is interesting here, especially looking at the B&T district, of the environmental impact that could arguably happen if we were to do an industrial use and to do a heavier commercial use. Here, when looking at, although a high density multifamily residential, the potential for impact is actually much lower than a traditional use in the B&T district. The vehicle trips generated by the additional units will not cause any intersection in the vicinity to fall below acceptable levels of service, and the access and circulation plan has been designed to support the additional unit count. And last, I'll note the fifth criteria, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. However, with this note that the Board of Zoning Appeals determination, if you do determine that this is self-created, it shall not necessarily preclude the board's granting of the area variances. Unlike a use variance, an area variance is a balancing test, and it's looking at the impact of the project versus the benefit to the applicant. And as rightly stated in your code, courts have repeatedly confirmed that this factor is entitled to less weight than the other core statutory criteria, and that self-created hardship alone is insufficient to justify a denial. This project, as we went through, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's compatible with the character of the neighborhood, and it's beneficial to the community. And the other four factors decisively weigh in favor of approving the variances, as they will not produce an undesirable change in neighborhood character. There's no feasible alternative that exists. The variance is not substantial in context, and no adverse physical or environmental impacts will result. And with that, I'll pause and take any questions you may have.
Yes, I have a couple.
Yeah, please.
You referred to two developments. I assume you mean Northwood Apartments and then East Point. You said they were bought. East Point actually touches the back of Northwood. Those are the ones I think
Yes.
you're referring to?
Yes.
So I guess the question I ask you is, how come they were feasible and you say yours is not?
Yeah.
Because they do give our density. You know what I mean? They fit within our, I think, without a 300% modification. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I appreciate that question. Those parcels are much larger than the parcel on the corner.
but they cost more then because there'd be more land.
Right.
So maybe they get more rental, but I mean, feasibility is feasibility. If you can't make it because you got a smaller portion, how can you make it when you buy a larger tract? And I guess I give you one more. There was one just down the road, East Point 2, and they met our density. They decided not to do it because there were some wetlands in there, but they weren't asking them for a variance for economic feasibility. So I guess we just have to take your word for the fact that this is economically the lowest you can go.
Yeah, and I think, to counter that point, when you have these higher unit counts, or I'm sorry, the higher bedroom counts within that density, when you're looking at 6,000 square feet per unit and the unit is a townhouse, right? You can more easily meet that density than when you're looking at these small studios or smaller one-bedroom apartments, which again are created in order to provide a mix of residential uses within the village. When you're looking at that one-to-one comparison, maybe say differently, that's not an apples to apples comparison.
Oh, yeah, but I'm
You're
trying to
looking at
understand your point. Yeah.
Townhouses, you're looking at multi-bedroom locations. Also, candidly, the economy is different.
Okay.
So I don't want to opine on the feasibility of the prior project or
Oh, but different question then. When I walk around East Point, for instance, or I walk around Northwood Apartments, I get a very open feeling. That open feeling kind of matches with density and what I've come to like and expect here in the village. I like New York City. I go to New York City, but I don't live in New York City. Now, they have a lot of amenities we don't have in New York City. But what we do have here is space. And when you cut down that density, you take away something from this area. So just my feeling on density, that it is not a nebulous thing. It's an important thing for the community. It's, I think, what attracts people to the community. And I think what keeps our existing people here. So it's just a little different view on density than I think just matching how many can we get in this blocks can we get in there.
yes, that is very valid. And candidly, this is a small area. It's not a high rise. It's not thousands of units upon thousands of units. Part of the density is driven obviously by the economic feasibility of the number of units that have to be in the building, or in order for it to be feasible to be in the building. It's also a small parcel. And the combination of those two is what brings us to needing the variance. If it was a larger parcel or fewer density, right?
Okay.
Of course, that's how the
Could I
calculation
address a question about the larger parcel? I heard you say at a meeting that when you presented this that I saw online, that because you had a smaller parcel, you should be allowed greater density. And do you recall saying that?
I do not recall.
Is
I
that?
just you agree with it, and then yes, I see that.
If you don't recall saying that, I would draw a question. That's fine. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Anybody else?
No.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to give the board a chance. Alex, what kind of parking did we figure on having? I want to find out how many cars would be at the facility. Did we ever calculate how?
That was
It says 275 here, right?
Oh, 75 in there.
So is that with the commercial aspect of it?
That is with the commercial aspect of it, we are seeking a requested waiver from the planning board, which they are permitted to do under the code to reduce, to allow, I'm gonna say this differently. The number that is required is an addition of the residential units plus the commercial district, I'm sorry, plus the commercial use. Given that those two items will be predominantly used at different times of the day, we are seeking a waiver from the planning board to reduce from the number, combining those two numbers to have a number that's more reflective of the actual use throughout the day.
Just want to find out how you came up with the number.
So,
You said something about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
you said a few times that you're meeting the footprint permitted within BTD, but your parking needs are greatly exceeded by the number of units you have. So if you were meeting the density requirements, you would need far less parking spaces here, which would allow for more green space on the lot. If I'm understanding, like, you lose a lot of the lot to parking because of how dense the parcel is. There's a lot of impervious surface, not a lot of green space, which is another part of the comprehensive plan that we want to preserve our trees and our green space within the village. And this will be almost clear cutting the entire parcel. And then I don't know if there's sufficient space. It's something that the developer would have to figure out to replace sufficient numbers of trees pursuant to our tree law. So it's a lot of impervious surface because of how high the density is.
I do believe though your code also permits a tree fund, so it doesn't, I believe it comes.
At the discretion of the planning board.
1-to-1 on.
If that's what the planning board decides to go with.
And this is an area that is rich with parks, it's rich with trails, it's rich with the sidewalks connecting those items. This is a new type of a development in the B&T district. It was just rezoned in November to allow residential use in the B&T district. This is the first one before you. I'm mindful of there's things of a residential use in a industrial corridor or in a commercial corridor that is different from what you've seen before. But candidly, that is what's contemplated in the comprehensive plan, is to allow high density residential, a different mix of residential uses, a different type of units that are available to rent within the village. And that's been permitted through the rezoning in November to allow residential uses in the B&T district. And again, supported by the comprehensive plan to have different types of housing choices in different parts of the village.
Can I just follow up on the density question? In the previous iterations, and I think Mike has all the information, we did do a kind of density study. I guess it's a figure ground plan where we literally looked at the footprints of all the buildings in the village. And closer, which includes the East Point and all those things. And basically closer along the Bomax, it's fairly sort of big footprints. The kind of spacing between them, like what basically creates the sense of density, is essentially identical to East Point and all. So like these buildings are more or less like within the same distance of each other. They're kind of similar footprints. The only difference is that we have a lot more apartments now, as opposed to East Point, which are actually positioning themselves as luxury apartments. So, and again, like you have that. More we can share again with the board, but we did a separate study just on that facility issue.
And then one other thing about
Go ahead.
building costs. So town, I just went on to RS meetings, it's a generic, it provides cost data for
Sure.
engineers and architects. 2026 numbers showed that like those townhome types projects are about half the cost per square foot versus mixed use with parking inside and all that. So this type of mixed use development is upwards to $400 to $500 a square foot versus $250.
Is it the mixed use aspect or is it the
It's-
single, is it the smaller unit aspect?
It's the mixed use aspect,
Okay.
because you have a different, in this.
Yeah, right.
You have a lot more.
We have 7,000 square feet we can't use for something else, I guess, right?
So like the parking area inside the building, those kind of things.
Oh, inside the building.
Yeah, if you look at the footprint, there's.
How many of the 175 spaces are actually in a building?
20.
Bottom half on building.
28. They're mostly outside though.
For the most part, it's.
The space.
And
Yeah.
this, I go back to her, but it's on parking. You say you don't think the vehicle trips are gonna generate with the additional 84 now units, but it's also the retail space. So that you don't think that's gonna generate a good bit of traffic there, especially because it comes out on Bomax, comes out on Warren.
So we did a traffic analysis based on the original project, which was a much higher generation number.
Was it the one on this side though, or the one on the other side? The
That's
traffic
It's
study.
actually from the it was
With both.
sides, yeah. And what happens is with that type of usage, you had a higher AM, PM peak hour because it's mostly residential. Believe it or not, the retail spreads it out a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Because you're
Because you're all day long.
yeah, versus, you know, having a resident going back home and stuff.
We have a daycare down here that has the same thing as the work.
Yes.
Parents come right before and after into,
And
it's its own rush hour. Yeah,
and we will update the traffic study based on the final results because of, you know, we're changing the uses slightly, but it is gonna be a lower number.
okay, thank you.
So what you're saying in here, and it hasn't been, we said this before and it hasn't been said in front of this board, it's kind of relevant as far as density goes. The possibility of increasing to 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, which would decrease density, wouldn't become a feasible project at that point. That's kind of what you're saying.
My understanding.
Well, that's, you know, again, based on market study that was developed, you know, 2 years ago. The lower bedroom count units are basically preferred and more in demand, let's say. And that's what the base there kind of model.
Okay, I guess I have follow up because I'm a little confused. I thought I heard earlier that the townhouses were cheaper to make in effect
Per square foot.
per square foot. Okay,
But there's more demand for 1 bedroom and studio apartments than townhouse.
In the village,
Uh,
you say?
In the village.
Because we have more families in the village than previously, and I mean, I just don't know, I mean, that's for the developer to figure out if there's a demand for this type of use, but, I also question if these are studios and this also goes to the site plan, not the density, so it's really not a question for here, but, so I won't ask it. But I would know, Laura, when you were saying that obviously, you know, this is in BTD and now we've allowed high density residential in BTD, there was a purposeful decision made to match the density requirements that were in HDR. We purposely did not want to make BTD into a highly dense area. And that's why we matched the density requirements for HDR. So I think the argument that we've now allowed HDR in BTD, opening the gateway to these types of developments, we purposely didn't increase the density beyond what is already allowed in HDR. That was a decision that the Board of Trustees made, that they did not want to see that type of activity within the village. So just something that I would know, that even though it is an allowed use, and this is the beginning of a corridor into HDR, we want to kind of match the feeling of the HDR in the BTD area.
I think, you know, again, to know the character though of the surrounding areas, right? The character is the business and technology across the street. It's the airport across the street. It's the Dairy One cooperative next door. This isn't, you know, to the extent of we only want single family houses or we only want one type of housing here in the village. One, that is not supported by your comprehensive plan. Two, the area that this is coming in is not putting in the high rise in the single family residential area. This is putting in a small scale although dense, right? I don't want to seem like I'm not being transparent. It is a higher density than what was contemplated by the town, or I'm sorry, by the village board when they were making this revision. This is a different area than the single family homes. This is a different area than even down the street when they already had pre-developed the townhomes, right? We're not trying to match the townhomes. We're trying to have a specific product that is for a specific person. It's a young professional. It's a senior citizen who wants to live near family. It's maybe a young couple who just got married. Is for people that want to live in the village but are not yet ready for the single family home. This isn't, this is nice construction, right? This is meant to be a desirable product for professionals who want to live in the village and are not yet ready for that step of single family homes.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'd echo the comments about.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We like being an open community with trees, open spaces. And it just seems to me putting 150 people in a 2-acre spot is contrary to what we believe the village should be.
Your comprehensive plan disagrees. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not arguing against the feeling that the village wants to sustain.
Yeah.
But here in this, it's a 3-acre site. It's on the corner of road. It is in the B&T. And it is in compliance with the comprehensive plan to have the different types of units. And this would be a smaller unit count if there were 2 bedrooms. Or if there were 3 bedrooms.
I don't think simply because we want different types of housing means that the village wants 110 units. I mean, the point that you pointed out about having higher density and low density residential areas, that point is purely because a sewer line went in where there priorly wasn't one on Cuba Heights Road. So that has nothing to do with the BTD district. That's because, now there could be lower lot sizes in low density residential. So just because the village may be looking for different types of units, I don't think means that, then it can only be 110, studio apartments or 1-bedroom apartments, just to create that point in the comprehensive plan. Because a lot of that comprehensive plan, if you read it in the abstract, sure, but with the knowledge behind what went into it, I don't think it calls for a project of this nature or size.
What do you suppose if we prove this, that it's going to open the floodgates of other requests to increase the density of property?
So personally, I don't think so. I think you have to have that demand to want to have the residential in the B&T district. I do believe that the purpose of including the residential in the B&T district was for the Cornell Technology Center across the street. I can't speak to what density they will seek and what makes sense from their business perspective. But here, I think this project is unique, given its placement in a B&T district, given its placement next to the dairy co-op. I mean, when we're sending out the notices, usually you send out notices to dozens of people and individuals in their homes. Our notices for this was Morse Gene Works. It was the dairy co-op. It was the property next door that's owned by the same owner. And it was the post office. Those are the neighbors, right? When you're thinking about who is the community, or I'm sorry, who is the neighborhood? What is the character of the neighborhood? This parcel is quite unique, both itself for its development and then also with the B&T district of, when looking at the impacts to the neighborhood or the character of the neighborhood, I believe that this parcel is unique. And there are items that set this apart from other areas that might seek a higher density within the B&T.
I think though his point is, if I may, Roy, that once you open it, then other people can use this as an example. For instance, we know, say, plant down the road closes. That's a lot of land in there. Say they decide to change that to what you are, multi-residential. That's a lot of apartments you could put in there with claiming the same. So you can't just say, look who's around us now. His point is it opens the door because then everyone says, you granted that variance, why can't you grant ours? It's one reason to keep the density the way it is.
It becomes the nature of the neighborhood.
In either way, I'm just, he has a point.
The nature of the
Well,
neighborhood.
right, I think it is a different calculation when you're talking about density. If you're talking about reducing the density on those larger parcels, you are talking about thousands of units, right?
Well, wait a minute, they could, there's large unit now, but they could not end up that way. They could be 5 different parcels someday, owned by 5 different residential outfits. So you can't just say, well, it's a large parcel, look at the division. You got to look at the fact that density has then been changed. Variances have been given, and anybody else looking at that could say, give me my.
So as a former CBA chairman for 15.
I'm sorry?
As a former CBA chairman for 15 years, I was always told, once you approve a variance, it doesn't set precedent for the next.
I agree with that. Actually, that's a very true statement, but in practicality, it doesn't work that way. You know that too. Okay, just so we're on agreement.
But there's always something different about each side.
Yes.
And that's kind of where Laura's going with is that this site is kind of in a unique situation. It's almost becoming a buffer site between your residential and your high density industrial sites. So that's the kind of the changing nature of zoning and what we're seeing out there just from a land development point of view when you're looking at these, we used to do these big huge industrial parks and we're actually reducing those just because people aren't going in office spaces anymore. So we've been having a lot of rethinking on that level, but I just wanted to.
But I think the argument about precedent is that if you're talking about the character of the neighborhood, this is setting the character of the neighborhood. That now, well, if you look around, these are very heavily wooded parcels.
Yes.
Even, Dairy 1 is surrounded by wooded areas.
It was a wooded area
The street of
itself.
Bomax is heavily wooded. Even the Business and Technology Park, and looking at an overhead view, is heavily wooded for what it is. So the character of the neighborhood is still maintaining the natural resources that we have in the village without completely clear cutting and asphalting them.
Right, if you want to teach retail, you don't know. You have something that's there's this weird balance between the two, because if you're looking at going more towards the mixed use retails, which we heard was what we've heard from the previous boards, you kind of gotta, you can't just hide it behind street trees. Now, we can definitely do some landscaping to make this fit more in line, but you still need some retail space. That's why the retail buildings are on the Warren Road side and not behind the residential.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Yes, I wanted to invite comments from the public.
No, she's invited.
So I walked over there today and it is a heavily wooded and not all little. Well, they're big mature trees in there.
Totally. And having formerly been on the planning board, know what our tree law says, our sidewalk law. I'm not sure how this all works. And I think that there's some real issues that maybe it just isn't the right thing for this, maybe mixed use. I know that this is something that comprehensive plan talks about, but there are other parts that I could pull out there about green space and preserving natural resources and all of that, that I could also cite the comprehensive plan in opposition, actually. And so, not opposition exactly, yes, we want mixed use. It would be lovely, but I'm not sure that if people knew that this was going to sacrifice some of the forests and whatnot, that it's a trade-off that most people would want. Because one of the things people were so also very large on this, keeping trails and places to walk and that. And I would think that given the people that you're looking to attract, they're going to want I'm old, I love trees, I need shade, this is driving me crazy when the sun comes out with 100 trees. People who are single are gonna wanna go up for walks. And I think that maybe the mixed use business is appropriate, but that isn't part of the anything, but I hadn't realized that was what driving some cost.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to note, the reason we're before you is the density for the high multifamily residential, right? This can be used for any other purpose that isn't a B&T. So it is not the density that would cause the clear cutting of trees. It's the development of the parcel, and there would still be parking on the parcel. So to foreclose on the opportunity of developing what is private property near a park, very close to the amenities that are to being in this location, right? It's not this development or without this development, the trees would stay there. It's development, and development is permitted on this lot. What we are seeking to do is to bring a specific type of development that's then before you for this very area variance. And it's again, as I was noting, the location and the proximity to the parks is why this makes it such a perfect residential area. It would make more sense for it to be residential than an office building or a factory, right? What we're looking at here is or rather the item that we're here before you is because we're seeking a type of use that otherwise is more units than would be allowed in this building, but this parcel can be developed. It can be developed without variances, which we wouldn't be before you today. So candidly, this is a particular type of use that we think fits very well into the neighborhood. It fits very well into this parcel, but it's not this development that is stopping the development of the parcel for the clear cutting of trees.
Natalie, what are the, and if you look up an answer, that's fine. What are the legal implications if this variance were allowed and granted? And then let's say the parcel next door wanted the same variance. Is
I mean,
it,
I think it only emboldens the argument that it's in the character of the neighborhood.
and say they were denied? Is there a legal issue with that? I mean, you don't have to answer it. It's,
They could always appeal. It would completely depend on the board's
how they handle it.
weighing of the factors for that specific application that was denied.
So I think
I
that's,
think I agree with what he said about the general rule is just because we grant a variance doesn't mean the next guy gets one. But he also agrees with the practical side that yes, it does, open the door to requests, and you've got to explain it away, make that parcel different, et cetera. So it has an effect. It just should be weighed. That's all.
To what extent have studies that you've done to the same study that let you know that there is a desire in the market for studio and one bedroom apartments? Do you know that if this project were to be approved, that would fully satisfy that demand, or would it be maybe half of demand being met as it stands whenever the studies are done?
Well, so it's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of residential development going on in our area, as you know. So the demand, from what I understand, is far outweighs the supply. So I don't know, I mean, if we build those 110 units, it doesn't mean that this is gonna be it. That people are gonna be done wanting to, live in a 1 2 bedroom apartment. So I mean, to that extent, I'm not sure. Be honest, but we specifically work with a realtor who specifically is familiar with the area, and the realtor specifically suggested that 1 2 some 2, but mostly 1 and studio apartments is what is kind of in demand, and also kind of a point on a kind of economic issue from what I understand. You cannot necessarily command the same type of rent for these things, right? So that's why there is a kind of number situation. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Just to follow up, when you were doing the 500 units, you must have thought the demand would be for that. Were they one bedroom at studios at that?
Well, look, I mean, I just heard on the radio this morning that nationwide nationwide shortage of residential units, something like 30-40%. So we need that much more inventory nationwide.
Well, put it this way, the governor believes in it that we've received $6 million worth of grants just for infrastructure for pro-housing in Tompkins County on 2 projects alone. Just last year, so there definitely is a need for housing, period.
Yeah.
And affordable housing doesn't matter too.
Yes. That's all another.
Okay.
But yeah, I
Different
mean,
levels of affordability
Right,
is
different
also
levels of
what this is
right.
presenting,
Exactly,
that
that's
it's,
yeah, we need a wide range. That's the bottom
Yes.
line.
Well, thank you for your presentation and for your thoughtful comments. And I can really sympathize with the new idea of having mixed use, because we've talked about it in the village for a long time. That we're sort of entering a new era of looking at commercial and residential, and not as something that have to be kept away from each other, but things that can be combined. It's clear that our malls aren't surviving as malls, and that's when we've kept all of our commercial away from all the residential. So I like that idea. I like the concept. What really bothers me is the density and the loss of another yet 3 square acres of forest. We're losing by 1,000 cuts all the forested land in the village, and there's not a whole lot left. So it's just one of my concerns is to see that whole parcel go down. And I know it's inevitable. It's just something that upsets me every time I see it. It happened with Dairy One. They took out one of the oldest, biggest oaks I've ever seen in the village. They just couldn't save it because it was right in the middle of where the building was supposed to be. But those are legacy plants that we'll never see again. No matter how much you plant, you're never going to have trees like that again. So it's just a personal sort of aesthetic concern of mine is losing the forest, but more to the point is the kind of density that's now about 300% over what our village code allows. And just from that perspective, that's where I feel like I have my biggest concern. I can't help it. It's such a substantial overage that it doesn't feel insignificant if we were to approve it. So I'm very concerned about the density.
and I'll add, when this project was conceived, that there was a concept of transferring the residential development rights from the neighboring property. We're still figuring out legally how
Would that even work?
that would work. So it would be a transfer of residential development rights from one owner to the next.
You would still have the same plot,
It would be correct, but then this parcel where the concern was
not be developed.
not be developed with residential property.
And that's assuming that went with that property regardless of who owned it.
It would be
Correct.
a.
It would be it would be a deed restriction.
And that's, and again, I don't.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we talked about
Yeah.
discussing it
Yeah.
as an option.
To the extent, if that is a condition that would allow this project to move forward or addresses the concerns about preserving some of the tree line or ensuring that the next property can't be done exactly the way that this property is doing. That this concept was developed to be the residential will be on this parcel, the mixed use will be on this parcel, the retail will be in this parcel, and then potential commercial uses on the neighboring parcel should that more industrial use.
I don't want to look at this as a one-off because I think it's a good model. I mean, I think it's something that we've wanted to see just generally in our population is this idea of mixed use. We just haven't figured out how to do it in a really doable, workable way, like retrofitting the mall with apartments on top of it. I don't know if that would work. I think the building is falling apart.
And I think candidly, probably the density limit is very high here. It's higher than I've seen in other more developed areas. So to have one unit per 6,000 square feet that is a barrier to mixed use development. That is a barrier to smaller units. It's a barrier to exactly what we're seeking the variances from you today. So it is a high, you have a very low density number for
It's a
other
high bar.
villages and areas of denser population.
Especially when you think your lot coverage rate for the underlying use, the regular use. This meets that regular. We're not asking for a lot coverage rate reduction or,
Mhm.
I mean, we're under that number of 25%. So I mean, when you go back to your scale of what's allowed,
5% building or parking?
our buildings are well under the requirement.
And then that goes back to my point that yes, the buildings, but because of how much density you need, you have so much parking. So I understand the buildings are.
Typically, typically when I do an office building or any retail, actually retail is much more. You're usually 50% of so your lot coverage is actually building coverage rate, not lot coverage rate. But typically when I do like an environmental, the generic environmental impact statement, if I'm doing 100,000 square feet of building or office space, I'm doing 100,000 square feet of apartments. It's your general rule of thumb now. So we're in that case, we're about there. But your building, I want to call it building coverage rate because that's what your terminology really is. It's 25% of land, we're under the 25% by about 3 or 4%.
I just hate all the asphalt.
One more point on that matter, I mean, there was at some point an option, a version where parking was kept under the building and the building was up. But there was a concern about the building height, so with dropping down to 35.
At least so.
And as a result, we have to push the parking out.
But you have some parking inside, I
There's
gather.
there's about
20 some spaces.
spaces that we're able to squeeze in there.
And I think to Jamie's point, the code does regulate the building coverage, so. To the extent, I'm certainly, I'm following the logic of the number of units is dictating the number of parking spaces. Candidly, again, we're under that and seeking a waiver from it. But the development that would otherwise be permitted on that lot would have coverage. It would have parking. I'm sorry, it would have the parking lot being part of the lot coverage. So again, well, this is an illustration of what that lot coverage would be with a parking lot in a building. It's not necessarily because it's a mixed use residential facility, it's because it's development on this parcel.
And if you're going to a form-based the form, it's over a number of units, like the scale of the buildings that is allowed by the current zoning meets the same passage. We're doing that up at Southworks right now. We're not looking at units, we're looking at facade lengths, we're looking at how things are matching with the character and because you and I both look at the same building, we don't know how many units are in there. I got a project down in Binghamton. Someone thinks that the city thinks there's 113 units, there's actually 127 units, and no one knew that for 20 years. So that's gonna be fun. So I mean, that's where the form, I mean, you get back to the character of the neighborhood, that goes back to your form of your buildings.
This is more of a statement. Since I've been here, I think the reasoning for having the low density that we do have is they wanted to remain a village feel. And like I said, ever since I've been here, most of the either special permits or zoning or whatnot has been focused on keeping that, like I said, that village feel here and not become dense like Ithaca would be or something of that nature. Like I said, it's not a question, it's a
Downtown.
statement.
Well, that's why, like I said, I mean, that's why we did that study that I sort of passed around. I mean, this is like all the buildings in the, right, and the village feel, this is all the kind of little guys, right, the little single family units. And then it kind of gets larger here, this is, North Point and all those sort of things, and then you get into industry. So it sort of grows in scale toward, Warrenville.
Right.
And that's where we're at.
We're next to an airport.
Right.
I mean, and I'm appreciative of the village feel when you're in the core of the village. But this is in an industrial area. This is not the village feel. Oh my goodness, thank you. The village feel, again, rushing into the single family home area. This is a high density residential unit next to a commercial area.
Are there any more questions or comments at this point?
I guess
You want to discuss more about the whole?
yeah, does the idea of assigning development rights from parcel A to parcel B interest the board in hearing more about that? Or are does that not change your perception of the project?
I can only speak for me, and it's only because that's a relatively new concept. Might feel different if it'd been around for a while, studied and stuff, but I don't think I would want to wait for more on that before making a determination myself, but I can't speak.
It wouldn't change your opinion.
Wouldn't change my, because again, we have enough things we got to look at in the future that we don't know about. Different factories closing, dividing things. That's one aspect, but they didn't include it originally in their plan.
Well, candidly, it was a discussion between Laura and I. So there was multiple kind of iterations of this being batted about behind the scenes.
That's why the number's different.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, then I defer to whatever the groups decides if they.
We can also leave the public hearing open, like we can still kind of, you don't need to make a decision tonight. More information can be disseminated. I just want to make sure if that is something you're interested in hearing about, then you have the opportunity.
I can only speak from me, but it seems I'm still having a real shortage here based on, even if you put that with it, they would be like 48 units.
Just so you know, Mike, that would take you back to the numbers that I crossed out here. It
Mhm.
would take you back, numbers that are highlighted, would take you back to those numbers.
The 37%.
Anything else about the site though?
Correct.
The site remains the same. It's just the numbers that you're
Right.
considering change.
Right, I'm sensitive of the
Okay.
numbers and the,
But as I heard, or this property across the way could be developed to some commercial or industrial area, right? They just wouldn't be able to do
They
multi-resident.
wouldn't be able to do any residential.
Well, thinking for me, the density would still be an issue for me because that's industrial, right? That's not, but I defer to whatever, if everybody wants to keep it open. And do you have a feeling, Roy, whether you'd like to hear more about that aspect?
I wouldn't mind hearing more about it.
All right, there you go.
I would like to.
Sure, all right, let's go ahead and
All right, then there you go.
we have a few more details on how that would work. Because it's a new concept.
We can figure it out.
Just a question, you can work it up, but has this been done elsewhere?
it is done, the transfer of development rights is done all the time. It is done in the village of Pittsburgh when you're looking at the farm conservation. Those are actually 20-year conveyances of development rights from the farm owner to the municipality.
And where was that location?
In the town of Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh.
from Rochester's.
Rochester.
Yes, so when you look at Pittsburgh.
All right, but what my point is, it's been done in New York State, so
It
it's not
is done in New
something.
York State, yeah, the transfer of development rights.
It's new to me, that's all.
It's a bundle of sticks, and real property rights are a bundle of sticks, and one of the sticks is the ability to develop. So that would just be a transfer of those rights from one parcel to another.
But under that theory, you could acquire an additional parcel and even increase this to a closer number to my density.
Sure. We currently own the parcel next door, so that's not before you today. And I do want to caution, although I'm appreciative of the board's position and the board's role of thinking for the future and planning for the future, that 5-step criteria, right? The 5-step criteria is what does it fit with the character of the neighborhood now? Does it fit within the the comprehensive plan now. So again, I'm not discrediting the important role that you play in thinking about, well, what if and what comes next.
Oh, no,
But
maybe,
before
I
you
think
do
you're
that-
misunderstanding my question. Since you own that property now, okay, next to you, and since the South Point or East Point two developments failed, that property may be available. And you could buy the rights with that. And you could possibly come back to us with all your sticks, matching our density.
Oh, buddy.
If you're the one that says this is done, I'm the one that says I know anything
I'm
about it.
not,
That's a big
That's-
factor.
Well, it depends. I don't know. It's cheaper than buying property, I guess, to buy the sticks. That had been industrial there. It could go back to industrial. You know what parcel I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you're familiar, talk to them. It's not a viable, but I imagine you haven't talked about this piece, but they're not moving on that now. Maybe they would.
It's done. It's gone.
Board water still owns it, so you could, anyway, it's, if we're gonna hear more, we might hear more that would be able to come up to our full density.
It's just averaging density out across the.
Because the building will still be the same.
yeah, this is about.
Everything would still-
11
Right.
This is only about the 11-acre.
Just,
parcel,
yeah.
or the 11-acre two parcels together to be able to.
But if you had 5 more acres that you were buying the rights from, that would increase, or do they have to be contiguous?
I mean,
I don't think they have to be contiguous. It's something that I've only just started looking into. So I brought it up because and it was preliminarily discussed because there was not at this board discussion of concerns of segmentation. So that, once they get the variance on parcel B, they'll go for the same thing on parcel A and it will be huge development both ways. So that was one way to alleviate that concern.
because that's not the plan.
Oh, I see.
But if now it's one way, it would be.
See, it wasn't to get up to the full density. The way was to make sure that the density wasn't a lot worse because they went for the same project next.
It addresses the concern of precedent to some extent that we wouldn't be going 300% above, it would be 30, whatever the percentage above was.
Okay,
And
thanks for that clarification, but we're gonna hear more about it.
But again, it's not going to change how the site looks. So to the extent your concerns are about how the site looks, that's not going to
It
change.
doesn't change it.
And how it impacts the character of the neighborhood and the green space and the everything.
That,
It's really just something about you. So, yes, then you say, okay, this makes sense, blah, blah, blah. What happens because there are some interesting parts about this site? That you go to start and you realize, oh, this curb cut here is not gonna work, and you in and then out, and what if something comes up and you can't do this? What happens then?
Well, first I'll say, sorry,
Oh, no, you know.
no, before this board is the density and the
Issue.
setback.
Right.
So the site plan itself will be
Right.
before the planning board. And there are times that during construction, the realities of the site have to change the site plan. You go back before the planning board for
Right.
a site plan amendment.
Okay.
But that's not, that happens with some reason,
But then-
not when Jamie's designing it, he knows everything.
There were some,
Yeah.
like, there's some like, just in the corner there's the wetlands kind of thing, and you never know what you're gonna find, and I don't know what else is gonna come up when you go for the site, but I'm just saying, if 110 is the magic number and you can't get to that, then you figure out something else. Okay, just was wondering, just thought I'd ask.
And Lisa, any variance, if it's granted, would be conditioned on approval of the special permit.
Right.
Right.
It seems so, but you're just wanting to be sure that this first, energy into it.
Yeah, exactly right.
So there was an informational wetlands map that are no longer there. So the informational wetlands, the purple ones that were
I don't
distributed.
know, when we walked over there, it was just, the color, it's just right by the entrance there.
Oh, by the strong ones.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there's definitely some,
Yeah, but the rest was pretty well.
yes,
I mean, dry.
yeah. there was a whole New York State kerfuffle about some purple wetlands that they made a new mapping that.
Yeah.
We'll just have to go now.
Yeah, yeah, well, yes, the secret thing on there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
April 8th.
Exciting stuff.
That's the other thing we're losing is wetlands, the ability to absorb water in heavy rain. Well, I think we've pretty well covered the possibility of the transfer of development rights. So I think what we should do next is close the public hearing.
Well, I'm not close.
Oh, we don't need to close it. Leave it
No, I
all-
think some of the board wants, what I understood, more information about the transfer of
Okay.
development rights.
Like, wouldn't we just?
You should leave it open.
We leave it open right now. I don't recommend going through the seeker at this point.
Okay,
I would stop it right now until you get more information. At the
So we're-
next-
yeah.
I don't know how that would
next
work.
meeting.
You need a motion to hold the public hearing open. Just keep it
keep
open.
it open, we just don't close it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess to be transparent, is that a viable condition to seek approval?
And answer that.
Yeah.
I don't think we can answer.
Okay.
No, I think answering it would help us figure out.
It certainly makes
To provide additional.
some less severe variant. Certainly makes less severe.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right, and,
Addresses the concern of.
right, exact,
It's not palatable right now from, just a code perspective. So if it can be
Yes, that's why I
solved,
just wanted you
Yeah.
to see, let's see the
All right.
first pass, and then we can decide if it was a challenging decision, then there was always a backup.
and we identify this as a solution, knowing the realities, right? I mean, I.
At least to the palatability of the.
Palatability. I'm a lawyer, I don't know math that well, but I do, these numbers are different from each other, but this is, by knowing the reality of this parcel, which residential development is not intended, but if that is a concern of the board of granting this density variance and then being concerned about the parcel next door, that is something that we can address on the upfront so that it is addressing a potential concern in the future, which is additional residential development next door. It's a condition that we're happy to discuss and happy to explore to make that number not.
So to clarify, you do own the second parcel,
Correct. It's through a different corporation,
the
but
Transact building. And are they staying there? Are they moving out? Is that going to stay as a commercial operation?
they're, I believe, currently tenants, so there's no.
They're tenants?
Yes, there's nothing about this transaction that's impacting.
So it's just a B&T building that can be occupied by almost any business,
Yes.
high-tech business of some sort.
And the same with this parcel, right? So we are before this board because we are seeking that high density residential. We could put an office park there without
Yeah.
needing variance, right? So it's, and again, I hope I don't come across as dismissing the importance of the trees or.
No, I know you're not. You're not. The reality is,
The reality, this is a developable parcel.
yeah, no, we can't, Lorraine.
I just wanted to ask, I believe that the 20 Max is up for sale, is that correct? The building, I saw it on the real estate site. It looked like it was posted in February or something.
Say something.
So our client, whole parts.
Right, well, anyway, I saw it on the real estate website. And it went up for sale a couple months ago.
Okay.
But the factory.
In,
I would-
and.
What is
That's a good point. Fear of posting would be reposted. So it would.
Yeah, no, wait on everything.
Okay, well, we'll just,
I mean, I guess we could do the setback, but
Let Laura know that.
yeah, so we're gonna, we'll postpone the rest of the discussion for our next time, so we have time to gather information. Talk among ourselves.
And if there's any other information we can provide you, we do have, we have studies and some pre-development work, to show why the 500 units aren't that bad. So we're welcome to share.
To be able to share the traffic study?
It's
Traffic.
Was it- Oh,
Because another concern, if you're gonna really be bumped up to.
Please.
And the parking you're supplying is based on the assumption of 1 car per family or 2 cars per family?
In accordance with the code. So I think it's 1.65.
Point something family.
Yeah,
So just so out there, what is shown, is this assuming that you get relief from the planning board?
Is it staying? We are going to, and again, to address the amount of parking, I don't want to say this, the higher amount of parking is a concern. What we are seeking is to reduce that footprint of parking.
And this is the reduced amount.
That is the reduced amount of
And
parking.
you're reducing it by how much? Instead of percentage?
But it's like.
I do have the number in right here.
So.
I mean, you would be allowed to have, what would be your allowable total?
Size, one of the.
So yeah, it would be 191 parking spaces are required under the code.
So you're going to
Is that
100.
170?
175.
Yes.
But of surface parking, 147. So what you're
Yeah.
seeing is 147.
Plus the 20 some that are underneath.
Yeah. Under the.
Combine in the way the code is written, the mixed use parking is you combine all of the parking requirements for that use. So the combination of the residential
And the commercial.
commercial.
And have you given thought to what kind of commercial would be there? Don't have any idea.
Far along this.
There was a conversation about essentially, well, I mean, originally when we're talking the kind of previous iterations of this thing, there was a talk about daycare, grocery store, small grocery store, like
Could you do daycare?
Well, that's what the playground's for.
That's what the playground is.
I say, why is there a playground if they're all studio?
Yeah, right.
That kind of.
Yeah.
This is pretty.
But yeah, that was, you know, that was.
They have dogs, but not kids.
Anyway, that's for the planning board to look at.
Okay,
So Laura, table this for now. Along with everything else,
and we'll find another date.
including the second variance, right? We'll table this
Yeah.
until we have more, continue this whole process.
Then Natalie, maybe I can touch base with more additional information you would like. I can.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like I do for some short environmental assessment forms, or I can email it to you. Where.
Well, I want to thank you for your patience and for your diligence in answering all our questions, and I'm sure there's going to be more.
Thank you for your time. We really.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and sorry we can't conclude this tonight, but it's complicated.
It is, it's complicated and we.
To get our heads around it.
I love that.
Yeah. So I need a vote, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting. Can I have a motion?
Most of it.
Kevin, seconded by Mike, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned until further notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hearing remains open.